All right, let's go ahead and get this going. So, you guys have landed on a really cool webinar today. This is the Traveling Photographer's Guide to Organizing and Backing Up Photos. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about, travel and organization. And today I'm also joined by Allison Freedman. She is going to be our main presenter. She is a professional photo organizer. She is a bird photographer. She loves to travel. And so she's going to tell us a bit about her workflow so you can get a peek into somebody else's stuff other than mine, because you guys usually hear from me. So I'm really glad to have Allison joining us today. We also have in the chat JC Figueroa and Lori Rubin. They're going to be helping out with some of the questions as we go through. So you guys have lots of support here. Like I said, we've got a really good turnout today. So welcome, Allison. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what we can expect today?
Yeah, thank you, Angela. I love being here. This is the second or third, maybe fourth webinar I've done with you guys. I'm not sure. But it is you've hit on many of my favorite topics today, which are travel, photography, and of course, photo organizing. So if I can share my screen, we'll start that way because, of course, I have a little, whoops, you have to let me in.
Let's see here.
Let me in. Um,
Are you getting, Lori, are you getting a notification to allow screen
oh,
sharing?
nope,
Yep.
it's on now. All right,
Oh, it's
we're
on. Okay,
good.
cool.
We're good. Okay, so hopefully you can see can you see the title screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we're good to go. I'm super happy to be here today because these are three of my most favorite topics. Travel, which I would do my whole life if I could, every day, photo organizing and photography. So I am excited to be here today and share with you some of my tips and how I organize my travel photos and things that hopefully you can use as well. I know some of you already. I know I've worked with some of the people that are watching. So, hi, people that I know, and welcome to people that I don't know. My name is Allison Freedman, and my business is called Arrange Wander Focus. I am based in Chicago, Illinois. I work with clients locally and around the world, both in person and remote. And I don't always explain where my business name came from, but because this is a traveling webinar in a bit, the Arrange Wander Focus actually, one, it's my initials, but two, I am a wanderer by heart. That is, if I could travel all the time financially, I would. But I can't. So I am a wanderer. So that's kind of where the name came from, where I am very organized. That's the arrange. I wander everywhere, but when I come back, you've got to focus in on what's important. And in this case, what you're going to do with all those travel photos that you take. So that's where my business name comes from. I am a certified professional photo organizer, which means that I have taken a deep dive and training into everything from best scanning practices and video conversion to best ways to back up and store and all of the technology that you need to learn in order to help people on multiple different platforms get their memories in control. So my main focus is always helping people rescue and gain control over their memories, but there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes to make that work. So that is the focus of my business. I am also a certified Mylio consultant, which means that I work with Mylio and I help new clients set up their libraries so that they are set up for success. And I also have a lot of people who find me after they've been using Mylio for a bit and just need some help, maybe dialing in their library a bit or figuring out which of Mylio's vast tools they should be using to get to their end game. Whether it be a book or figuring out a share or better organization, whatever it is. That's part of what I can help with. I'm also, as Angela mentioned, an amateur, I will say amateur nature photographer, usually birds, but mammals and things as well. Semi-dedicated birder, meaning that if I had more time, I would do it more often. but I don't. But I do keep a life list, of course. And for my birders out there who care, it is a little bit over 700, which I am actually really kind of proud of. And a travel enthusiast, which I mentioned. And I also have a podcast with a fellow photo organizing colleague, Susan Wallach. Once a month, we hop on and talk to a different guest about all sorts of different things dealing with photo organizing. And one of our episodes a few months back was with David Vaskovich, who is the CEO and founder of Mylio. So if you want a peek into his library, go and find our podcast. I should have looked up which month it was, but it's sometime last year, and watch it on YouTube so you can take a peek into his library. So that is a bit about me. Today, we are going to focus on travel photos and what to do with them, how to organize them, and how to keep them from becoming a big old mess in your camera roll. So, when I think about my own vacation photos, I tend to take a lot, especially if I am going anywhere with wildlife. I spent a weekend not long ago, about 8 hours from Chicago in Minnesota at a place called Lost Bluffs, which is this insane place with massive amounts of bird migration. And I came out of 2 days with over 1,500 photos, mostly of snow geese taken off all together, which is a lot. But when I travel to a city, I might take like five. So knowing the type of vacation photos you take is actually really helpful in planning how you're going to organize them. So I also did a little unscientific poll of friends and colleagues a couple years ago about what they took and how many. And you can see the results on the screen. They range from 130 photos on a 16-day trip to Venice and Croatia. I could tell you I would have taken more than that. To to almost 2,500 photos from a trip to Alaska, over 3,000 on a trip out west. So it's really variable. And some of you listening may only take a few and they sit in your camera roll. But others of you may have multiple cameras and may take thousands. And hopefully, I can give you tips today on handling both of those scenarios, whichever you take. So, why organize your travel photos? And this might seem really obvious, but it is always best to know why you are doing something before you put in the time and energy to try and actually do it. I find it's very helpful. So, some of the reasons that I know of that organizing your travel photos will help you is it makes sharing easier. If you are on a trip and you take a photo you love and you send it right away to someone, that's super easy. But what about weeks later or months later or years later? How will you find those important photos that your favorite ones of a trip that maybe you took 1,000 photos? How do you find that one that you actually want to share? And some of that now is done for you much more easily. So if you have an iPhone, if you have an Android, and you are taking photos with that phone, it most likely has GPS. So you could, if you're looking for photos from your trip to Italy, you can type in Italy and you'll find them. Your iPhone now creates these collections, trip collections, so that might be easy to find. But can you find that ice cream shop that you loved in Arizona? Can you find your favorite photo of a lion that you took in South Africa? Maybe, maybe not. So if you can get yourself organized, um, those photos organized, then later when you're looking for them, you can pull them up immediately. And it makes photo projects a lot easier. So if you want to make a book, if you already have your travel photos organized, then making the book is actually quite simple. It's the organizing of the photos first, figuring out what you need and where they are. That is the hard part. And you're more likely to finish that project if they're organized. Also, it can help you save some space on your vaults or in cloud storage. And this last one is actually a big one. It can help reduce anxiety. I have a lot of people who come to me because they have a lot of anxiety and stress over the state of their photos, whether it be because they're just a bit of a mess and they can't find what they need, or they want to make sure that the library is in good shape to hand down to other family members. They don't want to hand them 10,000 photos on a camera roll. They want to hand them something with structure. And I've seen this in my own family. My kids and my husband are attached to my Mylio library. And if I just handed them, or if they just had an Apple Photos folder that had 50,000 photos with it in it, I suspect they would never go in there. And at some point when I'm gone, they might just delete the whole thing. So you need to have some structure for the people that you're sharing with later, and for yourself, so that it doesn't drive you insane. And I've seen this over and over and over again. So we're going to talk about the end game first, which is what the organized travel photos might look like. I actually have a video, but I'm going to attempt to instead bring you into my library. If it doesn't work, I'll play the video. But hopefully you can now see my library. And Angela, if you could just let me know that my
Yep,
library's on the screen.
I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So this is my library, my real one. It's not a sample library. It's not a fake library. There are a few things hidden in it that I don't want to splash all over the internet, but this is my real library. So you are looking at my calendar view, and for those of you listening who already use Mylio or have seen it, you know what this is. For those of you who are maybe watching, you don't know much about Mylio and you're watching to learn a little bit about it, this is one of my favorite views of the calendar view. And actually, while I'm talking today, if there are sort of Mylio terms that you don't understand, I'm not going to go into real detail, but you can put them in the Q&A, and Angela and the others that are on from Mylio can answer them there. But this is my calendar, and you will see on here all the red dots are some kind of travel. And the thing I love about it is, like, I can just come over here and I can get to those photos really, really quickly for any given trip. So my photos, my travel photos are organized. Each trip has its own folder, and it is named by the trip. So it will be called, say, 2025-02 South Africa. So, February of 2025. And that folder will be I keep all of my photos in a chronological structure. So I will have a folder called 2025, and that folder for South Africa will be inside that folder. What that does by having them segregated that way is it allows me to toggle on that little switch that says add event to calendar, which is how I can see them all here in my library. And I'm looking to the side because that's where my screen is with the library. And then that also means that I can click on one like South Africa and it will take me right right into all those photos. So we'll see some lions and, look at these cute lions and things. I can go right there with any trip that I see on my calendar. I can just tap it and there they are. So that's where they live. They live in those folders. But that means that they are sort of split up. It means I have a folder for travel, South Africa is in 2025, and then I have a folder in, 2022 for Uganda. They're not together. So the other thing that I have done is I have created albums for travel as well. So I have a master album called Travel, and then in each one, inside of that, I have groupings that are not real. There's no scientific method here. This is just the way I tend to think of my travel. So some of them are continents, some of them are by country, just depends on where I've been. And then inside of that, we'll have my trips. And literally all I do is take the photos that are in that folder. So, 2025 South Africa, and create an album. And that's solely so that I can keep all of the travel photos together. So here are those same South Africa photos that are in here that are in that folder. And then sometimes within those, I split it up even further. So in the United States, I live in the Midwest, so I have all sorts of additional albums in the Midwest. But I do this because, again, it's the way I think. When I think about my travel photos, this is how I group them in my mind. So I have the folder, which is where they live. And then I have these albums that show me things grouped together so I can keep them together. The other thing I have in here is I often make slideshows. I make a book for pretty much every big trip that we go on, and I put QR codes in those books that lead to slideshows, and I keep the slideshows in this album as well so that everything is together. And at one point, and this is show you that photo organizers are people too, and we don't always have the best ideas. At one point, I was just going to make albums of my favorites, and I abandoned that pretty quickly because I realized I don't need them because I can use the filtering in Mylio with some techniques that I'm going to show you in a little bit to get to my favorites without having to actually create different albums for them. So this is one version of what the end game can look like when you or take a little bit of time to organize your travel photos. Okay, so I am going to go back to here. Whoops, don't need that. So we're going to talk of the structure here today is essentially things that you need to do before you leave on your trip, things that you should do while you're on your trip, and then some things you can do on the back end when you return. And all of this put together will give you a fairly easy workflow for your travel photos. So starting before your trip, there are a few things to think about and some things that you should consider. One is don't worry about how many photos you're taking. So I get this question all the time when on a variety of things is how many is too many? Well, that really depends on you. If you come back from travel, any trip, think about the last trip that you went on. And if you, when you came back and you're flipping through those photos and you realize, I don't want most of these, then you're taking too many. If you are coming back and you are looking through and you're really enjoying sort of what you've got and wish you had more, then you're probably right where you should be. Um, if there are groups of photos that you think about from your last trip that you really didn't need, then maybe you should be thinking about have a little bit more intention in the photos that you are taking. So if you take a lot of photos of signs and you realize you never do anything with those, you don't care and you just delete them, stop taking pictures of signs. But if you realize when that you really wish you had a picture of that sign, that funny thing that you saw, then next time think about that and put that on your mental list of photos to take while you are traveling. So, thinking a little bit about what you want to do at the end can help you before you begin. And one last example of this is if you know you're going to make a book of your travels, you might want to jot down a few photos that you know you're going to want to add to that book so that you can remember to take them. I hate when I get back from a trip and I realize I wish I had taken that photo of, that tree or whatever it was, and I don't have it because I'm not going to go back. So have a little bit more intention from the very beginning with what you're going to take, and that can help you in the end. Now we're going to start to get into the mechanics of what I do and what I suggest. So thinking first about where do all of our travel photos come from? And this is the actual sources. So these days, most people take most of their travel photos from their phone. You know, that it's in your pocket, you have it with you, it's easy. Many of us still travel with a big camera. So I always bring my DSLR camera. So I've got photos that are going on to the SD card in that camera. Sometimes there's a GoPro that I'll bring. Sometimes people bring two cameras and a GoPro. If you're going on safari, sometimes people bring multiple cameras with multiple lenses and all the things. Then there's also the photos that you don't want to forget about, the photos that you are going to get from your friends and family that are they're going to airdrop or email or text or whatever while you're there. You're going to have those as well. You might have photos if you hired a guide. They might give you some. And you might have photos if you visit a place that creates their own photos. Like you go to Disney and they try and sell you all the photos where you look ridiculous going down Space Mountain or something. Well, I look ridiculous. Maybe you look good. So you might have those as well. So they're coming from all sorts of different sources. And one of the big things today is to get them into one place. Because if they're in four different places, you will never find them again, and it will make your projects and things that much harder. You may also have additional photos. I call these the plus plus photos, things like itineraries or other documents that you might need or want to have on your trip. You can have those in the same place. I tend to use the itineraries. Sometimes I put them right in my book. So I want to have them there. But you may also have things like tickets and other, travel ideas, all of that that you may want to include in that batch of travel photos. So, first big takeaway for today is really you need to get organized before you even leave for your trip because that will set you up for success. I'm going to go through what I do and hopefully this will make some sense to you or you can adapt it to the way that you work. So, I do a couple things. The first thing that I do is I create an away folder in Mylio. This is actually something that I learned from David Vaskovich with his idea, and I thought it was brilliant. So I have this away folder in my library, and actually, we'll go live here. We'll try that again. And it's right here, this away folder, and it's actually constant. I always have an away folder. This is while I'm on my trip, it's my temporary spot where I'm going to put all of my photos. I'm going to put the photos from any SD card, so a GoPro or a camera, photos people might send me. Everything is going to go here. And I do that so that it actually will force me later to clean them out because I am going to want these photos eventually to be in their own travel folder in my yearly folders. But while I'm working on them, I need a place for them to go. So this is where they will go initially. And this is where I store originals while I am on the road. So if I open this up, there are a few different folders in here. I have a general folder here that right now, these are things that I might need on any trip. So, an example right now in here, the UK recently enacted this thing where you have to have, I think it's technically a visa to go. And when you land in the UK and you scan your passport, it should just come up. It should know that you have already done this and paid for it. But we all know when traveling that important documents you should also have with you in another form. So that is sitting in this general folder. And I actually have my husband's and one of my kids in here too, which is why there are three in there. I also use this away folder for trip planning. So over the summer, we're thinking about going to Isle Royale and Voyageurs National Parks, which are north of me by many hours. So I put some random things in there as I've come across them so that they are there and ready for when I do go on my trip. Some of them I won't need, some of them I will. I keep a folder for a few random photography tips, always having to do with birds, so that I have it with me. And then this is my next trip here, this Romania trip. So this is the one that I have coming up. So this is the one that I'm going to be using. And when I go in there right now, it's pretty empty. I have my itinerary, I have the map, and then I have some random screenshots or photos I took of a travel book on things that I should be eating while I'm in Romania. Now this is the folder where while I'm traveling next, this is where I'm going to be putting all of my originals. So the other thing that I will do is set this particular, whoops, not that, set this particular folder to store all of the originals locally. And I'm going to come back to this spot, but because I have it up now, just wanted to show you where that is. On the device that I take with me, I will tap this on to store original files locally. I will also tap it on for this folder here so that I make sure that if I have no internet, I will be able to get to this form that I might need. Okay, let me move that out of the way. Okay, we can skip that. Okay, so continuing on, before you leave from your trip, you set up your away folder if you're going to follow this path. But make sure these are the two big things. If you get nothing else out of today, these are probably the biggest important tips. Make sure you have enough storage and test whatever system you are going to use. So, by storage, I mean a couple different things. I mean, on your phone, because if that's what you're taking photos with mostly, you need to make sure that your phone can handle it. In iCloud or Google Photos, if that's what you use, and if you're going to have internet, and on the device that you are going to bring that has Mylio. Make sure there's enough storage there. And if we're going to get to that too, make sure there's enough storage on that vault. And then test your system. So I'm going to show you in a couple slides what I do. And I tested it before I left. And if I hadn't the first time, it would not have worked at all. And I would not be at all happy while I was traveling and had this great idea and then nothing worked. So make sure you have enough storage and test your system. So the workflow. For me, I always have my phone. I always have, well, almost always have my camera. Like I said, sometimes I have a GoPro if we're going snorkeling or something somewhere, and then there's almost always photos from friends and family. And all of this is going to go into Mylio while I am traveling, and it's all going to go to the same place. So the mechanics of how this is going to happen. I travel when I can. I leave the computer at home. But if you bring your computer, it works the exact same way. I always travel with my iPad for a variety of reasons. I like having it with me. I like watching movies on the plane, whatever it is. So this is what I am going to use to gather my photos together and to do any processing that I'm going to do on the road. So on my phone, the first thing I'll do, obviously, when I've taken photos, is I'm going to open Mylio on my phone so that the photos from my phone can actually go from my iPhone into Mylio. And whether or not I have cell service, I do this anyway, and I do it every single day to give it time for everything to get there. With my DSLR, I have two different examples here. But essentially, you need to take the SD card out of your camera or your GoPro, and you need to get those photos either onto your computer or your iPad or whichever you're using. So a few years ago, I had this older iPad. I think it was 2019 or 20 or something like that. And I had to have this little tiny adapter here, which can hold the SD card, and in this case, a thumb drive. And the reason I needed the thumb drive was because this iPad did not have much space on it at all. So I couldn't be dumping a whole bunch of photos from my SD card onto this iPad because there was no space on it. So I used this thumb drive to set up a travel vault in advance. And I set the travel vault essentially to just be the dates that I was going to be gone on the trip. So if I was traveling from April 1st to 15, this little thumb drive would only hold originals from that time. And the reason why that's really important is because when I plug this little thumb drive into Mylio, it's going to try and sync everything if it's a regular vault. And this little 250 gigabyte drive can't hold my library. So I want to make sure it's not even trying. So I set that up as a travel vault. And if you have questions about that, I'm sure Angela and others can answer that in the chat or, send you to a resource there. Another thing I'll mention about this is because this is an older iPad, when I first set it up, I tried to attach one of my regular vaults to it, which was, a terabyte or a 2 terabyte SSD drive, would not connect. And it took me a little bit to realize why that was. And it's because this older iPad cannot read devices or external devices that are bigger than 250 gigabytes. So, had I not tested that and just brought a bigger drive, none of this would work. So, make sure you're testing it before you go. So, essentially, with these older iPads, I would drop in the SD card. I copied the photos off the SD card onto the thumb drive directly into that away folder. And then when I turn Mylio on, Mylio will see it and it will see all of those photos and it will bring them all in so that then I can see them on my screen and do the things I'm going to talk about next. Since that time, and you can do this on this trip, I had no internet. So it was really important for me to be able to make a backup of everything without internet. So everything could go on this drive. Now, my phone photos, obviously, without internet and without Wi Fi, really, were not going to get onto this iPad until I had internet. So I did let them go into Mylio on my phone, but I didn't worry about it at this point. I've since gotten a newer iPad. This iPad has a terabyte of storage. So I set this iPad to store originals just for that away folder so that when I plug in that little SD card, it will automatically import those photos into my away folder where they are stored on my iPad. So now I have two copies of everything on my SD card, on the SD card itself and on the iPad in this instance, and on the thumb drive in this instance. So, again, test this before you leave to make sure it's doing what you want it to do. Now, my phone photos, when I had internet, I would open Mylio and let everything sync back and forth. And then the nice thing is now in that away in on my iPad, I can move my Apple Photos photos over to that away folder so that they're all together in here. And one last tip too, when you are using a camera and you're traveling, just make sure you change the time on your camera so that all of the photos are at the right time and you don't have to fix that after, although you can. So once you have everything together, and I tended to do that daily or almost daily, whenever I had time, I would upload. But I tried to upload from the SD card daily because I really didn't like the idea of only having one copy of those photos. Now, there's two things that I always do while I'm traveling for the organizing part, and that is favoriting the favorites and culling the low-hanging fruit. And these two things do not take a whole lot of time. And if you can do it while you're still traveling, you will save yourself so much time later because right now it's fresh in your mind. So you know what your favorites are and you know what groups of photos you can probably get rid of. And you can do this offline in Mylio. Again, if you're traveling with internet, that's not as important. If you're traveling without internet or bad Wi Fi, it's super helpful that in Mylio you can do all of this offline. So, what do I mean by that? So the first thing I do is favorite my favorites. Now, Mylio does not have the little heart like some other things have, so I use a purple flag. I have consistently done this for years. If you've seen any of my other presentations, you already know this. I'm like the purple flag lady. But throughout my entire library, not just the away folder, any photo that has a purple flag is a favorite. So I go into Mylio and immediately purple flag any of the photos that I love. And I know they're going to be the ones that I'm going to be sharing later. I know they're going to be the ones that are going to show up in a book. So I do that right away. The other thing that does is if you've handed your phone to somebody and they take 10 photos of your group, like this one here, the person probably took 20 photos. This is my cousin and I in Albania. I don't need 20 of those photos. I favorited that first one right away and then I just deleted the rest. And again, that saves you a ton of time later. And I think you can do that with pretty much every set of group photos that you have, with the one exception of if you have little kids where, they're not always smiling or whatever. But I can tell you, we had a good 10 or 20 photos exactly the same. I don't need them all. So I favorite right away. And I also cull the low hanging fruit. So this is, again, the rest of a group photos Or I know I just took something that I took four of because I was trying to get the right angle, and I know three of them are bad. I don't need them. I will mark those for deletion right away because I know they're there. And I'm not talking about going through all of your photos every day. If you can, great. But if you can't, just you'll know. You know, I took 13 photos of that church because it wasn't until the last one I found the best view. Go ahead and mark the rest. I will often just use a reject flag on those instead of deleting them right away. I find it faster, but you can do it either way. Another example of this is our guide with this horse that came up behind him. I thought it was really cute. The horse kept moving, so I kept taking the photo. But I knew I didn't need all of those. So I got rid of these two right away, and it was super easy. And then the last example of that, I was trying to take a picture of this little beetle. I was having trouble focusing on it. So you can see I took like a million of them. I really only needed a few. I probably didn't even need these three. But I knew when I was taking it that I could delete most of them. So when I had a moment, I went back in and I actually just picked the ones I wanted and marked the rest for deleting. Because there's two ways you can think about it. You can mark your favorites, which is the faster way, and then sort of delete the rest in the grouping. Or you can go through one by one and reject the ones you don't like. The faster way is definitely just picking your favorites, but you do whichever one works for you. Those two things are the biggest, going to give you the biggest bang for your buck by far. And if you can do that before you get home, you will be in great shape. Now, some of the additional things that I do either on the road or at home or some combination is add some story, add some additional captions and keywords, and add the GPS. And let's talk about that a little bit. When my kids were little, I used to keep travel journals of every trip. We would sit down at dinner and I would make them tell me about their favorite time during the day. And sometimes it was cute, sometimes it wasn't, but I would have that. And then when I made a book, I would put that information directly into the book. And it came out great, and I love doing that. I don't do that so much anymore. My kids are in college, and nobody has the inclination to help me with the journal. So now I actually do it in my photos. So I will, when I have the inclination, I will pick a photo, usually one of my purple flagged favorites, and I will go into the caption and I will add some of the story there. I will then add a keyword journal so that I can find those photos later because I don't do it to every photo. I do it to, maybe five during a whole trip. But if I add the keyword journal, then later I can search for that and pull them all up and then use that for the book or a slideshow or whatever it is that I want to do. Now, pro tip, oops, and I realized when I shared my screen that I did not share the volume, but I'll just narrate. A pro tip is you can actually do this with speech. So if you don't want to type with your fingers because you can talk much faster than you can type, then you can just use speech to do this. So you open your photo in Mylio, on something with usually you're going to do this on a phone or maybe an iPad. You tap that info button so that you can get to the screen with the caption. You tap inside the caption so that your little cursor's there. And then you hit the little microphone and you just start talking, and that will show up in a caption. So in this example, my cousin and I were sitting at this table right here, beautiful day, and then the storm came in and these waves came up from the ocean, totally drenched us. We had to move inside. So this is now us looking outside at where we had been sitting. And so this, like I said, I don't think you're going to hear the sound, but if you can't, it's okay. So I had hit the button, and then this is me talking. This is me saying what was happening there. And Mylio is just picking that speech up. And in a moment, there it is. So then it just shows in the caption. And it may have some spelling errors or whatever, but you can correct that later. But it's a super fast way to do it. As a little side note, this is a great trick to use with people you're trying to capture their stories so that you don't have to be like typing while they're talking. You can have them talk right into the photo and it will save it. Some other things you may or may not want to add keywords for, if there are certain things that you take photos of regularly that you want to be able to find in any collection. Food, I don't take a ton of food photos, but I know some people do, so you might just want to add a keyword food or a type of a building. In my case, X-rays is a big one in my library because my kid breaks something, including while traveling. Some of these things, signs, all of that, you don't have to go crazy. This is really just if you want to be able to find groups of photos later. The keywords can really help. But if it's going to give you anxiety and bog you down and slow you down, then don't do it. It's as easy as that. It's better to get some of the other things done, like your favorites and some culling and some captions, than to really take a lot of time with things like keywords. Now, a word for my birders. I have to throw this in here. One thing I do on every single trip and every single time I take out my camera is I do add keywords to all of my bird photos. I even have a bird space in Mylio so that I can just see those photos in my calendar. Every bird photo, and I tend to do this before I cull them, and I tend to do it the day of. And the reason is this: I don't want to forget what the bird is. So if I had to look a bird up because I wasn't sure because I'm traveling and I look it up and it's a crested barbet like this is, I'm literally going to forget that the moment I get on the plane. So that evening, I will go in and I will add a keyword bird always, and I will add the name of the bird there. And then sometimes I add where later, but I don't always do that. But this way, later on, even when I'm culling my photos, I already know that's taken care of, and I don't have to relook up what the bird is. So a little segue for my birders, and then I'll cull those usually when I get home because I want a bigger screen. You can also add GPS. So if you're using a camera that doesn't have it, take a photo with your phone when you're in that same area and just copy the GPS tags right over into the GPS so that you can then see this map view of every place that you've been. There are also some apps you can use that can match up your camera to where you are. I find this copying over just faster and easier. And again, it's made easier if you remember to change the time on your camera, or if you realize that you forgot, then you can use the Mylio time shift feature to adjust all of your camera photos at once and move them the hour or two that you screwed up with. Now, once I have done all of the things that I want to do, and you don't have to do all of these things, obviously. Once I have done all the things that I want to do, and some of this is done when I get home, I will either rename that folder, so that Romania folder, might rename it with the date, the year, and the month, and then move the entire folder over to my chronological folders because I know all those photos are done, or I will just move the photos themselves into the other folder in my cron set and then have the away folder late there for later. I tend to do the latter. I'm not really sure why that is, but I do leave them in the away section until I'm completely done. So you could do it actually. You could, as you finish batches of photos, you've added GPS if you want to. You have favorited whatever it is that you decide to do with your travel photos. As you finish a bunch of them, you can move them out of the away folder and into their final resting place. And that way you know which ones you've done and which ones you haven't. I'm a big fan of using the folder as a to-do list. But for me, once it gets moved from the away section to my chronological section, then I know they're done. They're folder photos that I want to keep and that I have added any additional information that I want to those photos. So that is, yep, that is there. I was a little bit ahead of myself. Like I said, you can move the whole folder and rename it. You can move the photos out, and then you can delete that folder or rename it to repurpose it for your next trip. So that's again after you've favorited done a little bit of culling or a lot of culling, added any captions that you might want to add or GPS, whatever it is that you want to do. I'm just laying out the possibilities here. We all have things that are important to us, and that's what you should be doing. And then the payoff. So the payoff is what I showed you at the beginning in Mylio, having that, amazing space where you have all of your trips and can find them wherever, whenever you want or see them on your calendar. You can also easily make books or put them into digital frames. So when I got home from South Africa last year, it didn't take me all that long to identify the photos that I wanted to share and put in a book. So this is a page from what my actual photo book that I made, a two-page spread. And the photos had already been identified while I was in transit. You can imagine how many photos I had of this little lion because he was super cute. And this one, I mean, there were probably hundreds of this. But by the time I got home, I'd already identified which ones I liked. So I already had them ready for the book. And I had already the videos as well, because all of this applies to videos and photos. I'm just kind of using photos to cover all of it. I made a little video, a QR there that you may even be able to try now. I'm not sure if it's big enough on your screen and see the pictures of the lions there. But this book was relatively easy for me to make. And then I also have, we went to the Grand Canyon and area over Christmas. I haven't made that book yet, but you can see I've got a bunch of my purple photos, full flagged photos there, and those are going to go into the book. So that is already set. And a last little segue for my birders. Remember, I put the names in my photos for all of them. This is another page from my South Africa book, which was quite easy. I know you can't read it, but it was quite easy to pull together and was made it really easy to make my bird list because it has the name of every bird that I saw and where I saw it. And I pulled that from my photos, made it really, really easy. So, and yes, this is a little bit geeky, and I really don't expect most of you to be doing that. Now, photos that are shared with you, I'm not going to go into how the best ways to for people to share. That's a whole other talk. I do have a blog post on it, I think, on my website, but the same process applies. So if people are sharing photos with you that you really like and that you want to keep, save them to your camera roll or your computer right away. Because with pretty much every sharing program, as soon as the person decides they have run out of space or they delete some, you won't have them anymore. So you want to make sure that you are saving those, and you should save them right into that away folder so that they're right with everything else. And you can cull them appropriately. And if you don't want to cull them right while they're sending, because they send way too many, stick them in there, save them, and then delete what you want later, or choose the ones that you want. And it's super important because, like, this is just from Google. Google's an easy way to share. A lot of people use it. But if somebody stops sharing that album, the photos are gone for you. And so make sure that you are downloading and saving any photos that people share with you at the time that they send them. Save them into your own accounts. So that is it. I hope you learned some things. This is what I do. Hopefully, you can pick and choose things that will work for you. And there's just my information if you want to connect with me. I have a bunch of blog posts on travel and I send out a monthly newsletter, or you can just shoot me an email and send me a question if you have it. So that is it. I guess I'll leave that up for a minute, but ready for questions if there are some. I can't see them. So if there are any, Angela, you can let me know.
Yeah, we've got a couple for you. Nove asked, as a best practice, do you recommend separating photos and videos into different folders?
No. I mean, you can. I guess it depends on what you're going to do with them. I don't. I actually prefer to have them together because videos, for example, I have an older camera, and for whatever reason, any videos I actually take on my camera have the wrong date. Always. Doesn't even matter if I fix the date, they're always about an hour and 15 minutes off. I've never been able to figure that out. So if I put them in the same folder, it's easier for me to match up where they go. So I don't see any reason to do that. Plus, if I am adding keywords or captions, I want to do it in bulk. So I want to be able to select the photos and any videos that go with it at the same time and add that keyword or caption all together.
Awesome. Karen asks, do you identify photos from others with keywords that identify you are not the photo taker?
Sometimes. And the reason I would is it depends on how they're shared. So if somebody's sharing them with me via WhatsApp, and I know that those photos are not high quality, I need to know that so that they don't go into my book as a big double page spread.
Good
If
call.
it is my sister-in-law, who's an amazing photographer, I will so that I can make sure well, I can tell which photos are her anyway. But, in case I ever need to give her credit or something. But, regular stuff from my kids, I don't bother. So it really depends. It's mostly my real reason for doing that would be so I can keep track of the quality without having to check each photo to see, is this big enough to print?
Got it. Let's see here. JC or Lori, were there any other questions that popped up that you think should be answered? One that I saw come up quite a lot from a handful of different people is what's the difference between folders and albums in Mylio?
Yes. So this is a really, really, really important question. Literally every single one of my clients, this is where we start. So a folder in Mylio is where the photo is actually stored. So if you are not in Mylio and you plug in your vault, your little SSD hard drive, whatever you're using, and you navigate to Mylio and you can see the folder structure, you can see 2026, you can then see a folder for me anyway. You'll see a folder 2026-01, 02, 2025-02 South Africa, and I can pull that up whether I'm in Mylio or not. An album is just a collection. So, an album, your photo can be in 6 different albums, but that is Mylio specific. And actually, pretty much every photo organizing software uses the same structure. It's not where the photo is stored, it's essentially just a reference point to get you back there. So, like if I needed to pull up, if I wanted to pull up that collection of albums that I had with all of my trips together, I have to do it in Mylio. If I wanted to pull up just South Africa and all I had with me was the drive and I didn't have any device that had Mylio, I could still pull those up that way. Um, so that's the real difference, and it's really, really important, really important. So I'm sure there are additional webinars and things that Angela has done. She's probably has several different ones on that for more detail, but that's the main difference. Folders where they actually live, albums are just sort of digital collections.
Exactly. Yep. And I did share a link to an article about that that goes more in depth in the chat if you want to dig in.
Yeah.
Karen asks, is your QR code printed in your books linked to Mylio somehow?
No, that is not linked through Mylio. I guess I could, but I've been doing that for so long that I actually keep it in a program called pCloud, which is essentially like Dropbox. And I have them in a folder that says do not delete QR codes. And probably the reason I wouldn't do it in Mylio is because I tend to change those albums around. I publish, I unpublish. And as soon as you do that, you break the link. So you need to put them somewhere that is online accessible, because you have to point it somewhere and you have to put it in a folder that is not going to move ever.
Excellent. Nalene asks, Allison, why is Mylio your preferred photo organizing system?
Okay, good question. There are a couple reasons. So as a photo organizer, I actually work with clients in several different photo organizing softwares. And I will tell you right now that Mylio is not the best for everybody. Sometimes they are better off just staying in Apple. Sometimes they're better off in something web-based, because of the quirks of the different systems. So you have to find what's right for you. The thing that works for me is I really, really, really always want to have an easy automated backup that is on a hard drive that I can, have right here at all times. I am a big, big believer in owning your own photos and media, and Mylio allows me to do that. All I have to do is plug in the drive, and I will have a full copy right here, whether it's attached to anything or not. And there's really no other software that I know that can do that. Um, you can do it manually, I suppose, but that would be a lot of trouble. So that is the first big reason. The second big reason is I really, really like the ability to add flags and to add colors, I've used Lightroom a lot. And Mylio has a lot of the same functions that I liked in Lightroom, but Mylio can be on my phone, it can be on my iPad, it can be on my computer. I can set it to just save the originals from that one trip. I don't have to have everything. Like it's really flexible for me. And it works as both a photographer and just as a general whatever. And I can share it with my family easily. My kids and my husband both have access to those chronological folders. What they don't have access to are some of the folders were hidden in today's presentation, which is all of my work stuff and other because I don't want them to have it. So I can segregate. That's the other reason.
Excellent. Looks like JC's handling the last question that's in the Q&A, and I don't see any other new ones popping up in the chat. Let's see here, one more. Can I just use the Mylio software on my computer or do I need a Mylio subscription? I can answer that. So Mylio Photos, you can run the free version on a single device. So if you just want it referencing what's on your computer and your connected drives, you can run Mylio Photos for free. If you want your devices to talk to each other, you want to be able to access Mylio from your phone, from your tablet, and access some of the other more advanced features like deduplication, you do need a paid subscription. All right. Lori, JC, are there any other questions that you want to add to or answer for anybody live?
I think everything's covered. Yeah.
James is asking, is there an easy way to move photos from one folder to another? Absolutely. In Mylio, you can just select the images you want to move, right click on them and say move to folder. Very, very easy. Amelie, when we share an album, do we share a version of it at a specific time, or does anyone who has it see changes if we add pictures? So if you do a shared album, you do have to go and you add new images to that album. You do have to click republish in Mylio and it will refresh what's there. They don't automatically see it unless you click republish. Question here, can you share the name of the podcast? So your podcast is Inside Photo
Yes.
Organizing, right?
Inside photo organizing, yeah. You can search for it in Spotify or podcasts, whatever you use. It's also linked on my website. And you should all come listen because we have a lot of fun over there.
It's a good podcast. I listen.
Thanks. We should have you come on sometime.
I would love that.
All right.
Let's see here. Stafford says, so the images you take on your iPhone at the end of the day, you just move them from the Apple camera roll to the away folder, and then do you remove them from the camera roll?
Well, so that's an interesting question. So in Mylio, I mean, there's two different ways I could read that question. From within Mylio, I take them out of my Apple Photos folder and move them to that away folder, yes, and then they're gone from the Apple Photos folder. If you're talking about removing them from the camera roll, like the iCloud Apple Photos camera roll, I tend to leave them until I get home. And then I tend to, because I have everything in Mylio, I tend to mass delete like once a year. I'll go in and literally delete an entire years of stuff at a time because I don't have a space issue. And also, until I get home, I am always worried about backup. And so I leave things where they are. I just make copies on the road because I don't want to lose them.
Yeah,
It's
if I
important.
may, I'll jump in on this one.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your Apple camera roll, there's lots of variables. And one thing to remember is that unless you specifically have gone in and changed the default settings of your iPhone, the photos taken with your iPhone are going into your camera roll, but most often than not, they're also going to iCloud. So they are being preserved. So what Allison suggested, wait till you get home, is really, really good advice. The only thing I would add is that you use the free up space on this device feature of Mylio. That's a feature that's only available on iOS devices, so an iPad or an iPhone. And that will look at your Mylio library It will make sure that a photo has not only been synced over to Mylio, but that the original version of that photo has been saved to at least one of your vaults. Then it will delete it from your Apple Photos library for you. So use that feature. Just go to the manual. I'm sure Lori is probably already putting the link because she's so good at it. But if you go to the manual and type free up space on this device, it will show you the instructions on how to use this feature. That is the best way to keep your camera roll clean. And in my case, I have it set up to keep any photos that are 90 days or older, keep them in my Apple Photos camera roll. That way, if I'm traveling, everything from I, I haven't started traveling more than 90 days at a time yet, but someday. That way, everything is kept there and it runs every 30 days. So once a month, Mylio goes, hey, it's time to clean up your camera roll. And if I click OK, it tells me what can be deleted and it deletes it. So
Awesome.
But don't do it. Don't delete things from your camera roll until you get home.
Yeah, I agree. Question popped up here in the Q&A. Is there an easy way to filter lower resolution versions of the same photo when importing and only store the highest resolution versions? Not quite sure I understand that question. If you're importing from your phone, from your memory card, you should only have a single resolution. Now, Mylio will create a thumbnail in an optimized version. Mylio is going to propagate those across your devices, depending on your sync policies. If you have multiple versions of a picture, so maybe somebody sent you a version or you downloaded a version off of Facebook and you have the original, there are ways in Mylio that you can filter based on resolution, and you can start to clean some of those up, but that's probably a bigger project for a different webinar.
or a good opportunity to hire someone like Allison to help you.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Oh, let's see here. Steve saying, I recently had my PC and Mac computers almost die from the hard drive. I rescued the libraries folders. Can Mylio merge them? JC, do you want to answer that?
I'm sorry. What? I've recently had my PC and Mac computers almost. Um, I'm not sure what they're trying to merge. If they had a hard drive set up with as a Vault and Mylio, then all they need is a new PC and a new Mac and log in. So I will need to know more. So Steve, go ahead and send us a support request. Um, if you can, send the support request directly from the app, from the help menu contact support, because that will send us logs, and then we can help with more specifics, because there's too many variables that I don't know to answer your question.
Awesome.
Merging the libraries from the old computers, but I don't know which libraries you're talking about. They aren't different libraries on each Mylio device. It's the same library. So again, I think the best thing is to send us logs from your device so that we can see the status of your synchronization, and then we can tell you specific to your case what the best course of action is.
Excellent. Don saying, will the webinar be streamed later? So it is recorded, and Lori will get the recording posted in the community usually within 1 to 2 days. So awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Allison, for a wonderful presentation. This was really helpful. And even though I've got my system pretty well dialed in, you gave me some good ideas. Hopefully everybody else got some good ideas as well. So we always appreciate you having you come. Love to have you do more webinars with us. This is a lot of fun. And thank you to Lori and JC for helping out in the chat. Have a great day, everybody. And if you like, we'll have live Q&A tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Pacific. You guys can jump in, ask questions about Mylio. Friday, we'll have a coffee break, which is a short tutorial. We're going to be talking about photo editing. So hope to see you guys at some more events. From that, we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.